Caregiver. Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so glad you could join us today. We have another wonderful program for you. If you're a caregiver and caring for someone who can't care for themselves, especially someone with some form of dementia, then this show is perfect for you because we give lots of help on this program. As a matter of fact, we started it 4 years ago, and it's been very beneficial to so many people. I'm glad you found us. Maybe it's that you need some more education, or maybe you're a brand new caregiver, or maybe even a seasoned caregiver, but you're at a different place in your caregiving journey. Things change all the time, daily, sometimes on an hourly basis even. It's not easy keeping up and learning as you go. So this show was created for caregivers who can learn in the privacy of their own home, on their smartphone, on their computer. You can listen to us on the iHeartRadio app anywhere in the world. You can watch us live stream every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The benefit of that, of course, is that you don't have to go anywhere to learn. You can do it on the go. You can do it when you have some downtime at home. Sometimes it's really hard for caregivers to get up and get dressed and get ready to go somewhere like a support group or maybe an educational seminar, especially if you have no one to watch the person that has the dementia, and you certainly shouldn't leave them alone. This is the program where we give expert advice from professionals in all different areas: elder law, financial, social, as in social workers, mental health, caregiving tips. We even have actual caregivers that come onto the program to tell their story and share their heart with you, because it's easier to learn from someone who's been there, who's walked in your shoes. And after working with caregivers myself for 19 years, I just find it so rewarding that we can help people and people are willing to share, and you're not alone, and you're never alone because you have people that will help. And this program tells you how to ask for help, how to take care of yourself as a caregiver. Lots and lots of great advice. So today we have a wonderful person coming on. She's been in the caregiving field for over 20 years, helping families, and she's going to join us today on the telephone. But before I bring her on, I want to ask you a question. Do you ever feel as you're caregiving that sometimes you don't know the right thing to say to the person with dementia? Perhaps you're a friend and you're visiting and you just are at a loss for words, or you don't know how to respond to that person. Or maybe you do respond and it ends up creating friction or upset or anger. So now you're afraid to say anything because you're afraid to say the wrong thing. And it's hard. It really is if you don't have the experience doing that. So today's show is all about that, how to communicate better with a person that has dementia and how to get them to do the things that you need them to do, like take a shower, mealtime, getting dressed, when it's not easy because either they don't understand or they're distracted or they don't remember. Lots and lots of different changes in a person as they go through the dementia world. And we're going to talk about that today. So my guest is Pat Zagany. She's a certified dementia practitioner, and she comes from the Sarasota area, here, Sarasota, Florida. We are live, actually, from Boca Raton, Florida, so Pat's going to be joining us here in just a moment. But first, just a little bit about Pat. I was lucky enough to meet her about a month ago, and I was so impressed with her compassion and her passion for what she does with caregivers. She's been relating to seniors many, many years, working through and with many fine senior living communities in the Sarasota and Bradenton area, and she's helped hundreds and hundreds of families. Her experience and her compassion and being a certified dementia practitioner helps because she is there to educate and to lend that helping hand. She serves on many senior advocacy boards, and she's highly respected in the community and makes her a great partner to work with families. And as a matter of fact, Pat actually took care of a family member as a caregiver for about 5 years. So not only does she have the experience and the expertise to help others, but she's been there. She's been through it. She knows. And that's what makes her so special. So joining us right now is Pat Zagany. Hi, Pat. Are you there?
Hey, Marcia. How nice to be on your show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you. We've been talking about how difficult it is for families, not knowing where to go or what to do. And we want to talk about that today because you have all this experience helping families in the dementia world. So before we get too far, just in case no one has heard of a dementia practitioner, you are a certified dementia practitioner. Explain what that means. What is it? What does that do?
Well, in order to become a certified dementia practitioner, you have to have worked in the dementia world for at least 6 years or more. And if you have, then you can go ahead and take a course and pass a test and then become a certified dementia practitioner. I'm also just getting started with my Montessori dementia practitioner, so I'm taking courses on that right now also, which is very interesting. But, it's really a wonderful thing to be able to talk about a caregiver's journey. And that's where we're at right now when we talk about how do we approach somebody with dementia? What do we do when they're asking us questions as far as someone passed away? Where's my husband? When the caregiver knows that the husband has already passed away. That's what we call joining their journey. What you do is you say, well, your husband's not here at the moment, or he's still at work, but you certainly don't say, don't you remember? Your husband passed away 2 years ago.
And why is that bad, Pat? I know a lot of people do that. They want to tell their loved one, and perhaps it's a daughter, and she's a caregiver for her mother, and the husband, the father, had passed away. Why is it wrong for the daughter to tell that to the mom? Because certainly the daughter wants her to know and figures, well, she just forgot, and I don't want to lie to her. But why is it important not to say that?
Because each time you remind her, she relives the death of her husband, and it's a terrible thing for someone with dementia to have to do over and over. So it's better, as I say, to join the journey and don't you remember that person passed away, but just when they say where's my husband, you would just say, well, he's working late or he's out of town, and I call those little fiblets. And those fiblets are to keep that person calm and in a good state of mind and not getting them upset. Well,
certainly I've seen that also before where the mom or the dad, where's my wife, where's my husband? And you're right, every time they're reminded that they died, they grieve all over because they forgot that they knew that they died. And it's heartbreaking to see, it really is. And I don't think people understand how difficult that is for someone to continually be going through that grieving process. It's just agony for them over and over and over again. So we call this, I like what you say, join their journey. We also call it getting into their world, into the dementia world, obviously because the person with dementia really can't function anymore appropriately in the normal world, the world that we live in, that we're used to. So we have to get into their world. And we're going to talk about that today because there are so many things that caregivers, struggle with. And how do they know? How do they know what to do and how to do it and when to do it unless they have education or someone to help them? And you, being a certified dementia practitioner, help people all the time with this. So I think you're the perfect person, to be on this program and talk about this. It is hard, and you obviously have the education, but tell me a little bit about, if you don't mind, your personal experience as a caregiver. What did you go through?
Well, my husband didn't have dementia, but he did have an illness that lasted for 5 years. And I think it doesn't matter what illness it is when you're a caregiver. I think the biggest thing is that you start to grieve about losing that person because they're there, but they've lost weight or their memory is going, and so many other aspects that happen. You start going into this grieving process at the beginning. Before they go, you grieve because that is not the person that you married, or that's not the mom that you remember or the grandma that you remembered. And it's very hard emotionally to watch this.
Yes, I heard someone say not too long ago that he was losing his wife twice. He was losing her once because of the dementia, and she wasn't the person that he married because of the changes in her personality, the changes in her cognitive thinking, even the changes in her behavior. And then again, he was going to lose her the second time when she literally passed away. And it is very, very difficult to see that and to go through these changes. And you struggle no matter what kind of caregiver you are. Like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be about caring for someone with dementia, because a caregiver is a caregiver, going through all of those different emotions and fears and doubts and uncertainties. So I know that you can relate to your customers and your clients when it comes to understanding what they're going through, and I'm sure that becomes a very compassionate time for the two of you so that you understand each other.
I've heard many family members say to me that especially dementia, being a caregiver during that time is worse than death, because death is final. But going through this, you don't know how long it's going to last. And so it just becomes more and more difficult to see this person that you love not be the person they used to be.
Yes, and speaking of lasting, I mean, the doctors say that if you get a diagnosis, let's say of Alzheimer's, it can last anywhere from 2 to 20 years, the average being 10 to 12. So that's a long time. And that's why sometimes it's called the long goodbye, because it does and can last so long. So I'm glad that you're here today. We're going to take a quick first commercial break. And when we come back, Pat is going to talk about getting more into the world of dementia, how to manage some of the struggles that caregivers have, and how to join their journey when it comes to specific things. So don't go away. We will be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. My guest today is Pat Zagany. Pat is a certified dementia practitioner, and she is calling in. She's on the telephone with us now from the Sarasota, Florida area. Pat's been helping families deal with all kinds of issues related to caregiving and dementia for over 20 years. So, Pat, let's talk a little bit more about these fiblets, as you call them, little white lies, so to speak. Why is it okay to do that? I mean, what about the family that says, oh, I don't want to lie to them? How does it make their life as a caregiver more challenging if they continue to try to stress the reality of things?
It just makes the person with dementia much more upset, much more uncomfortable, because they're already in a different place. And that's why we have to keep saying we're going to join their journey. For instance, they might say, listen, I've got to go home. The kids are coming home from school. And you say, Mom, you haven't had any kids in years. We're all grown. We're married. And now Mom's going to argue with you. No, I have kids. It's so much easier just to say, okay, Mom, I'll make sure I go get them. Everything's okay. No matter what they say to you during this time that they're in their other world, if you agree and just go along with the story, their life and your life as a caregiver is going to be so much calmer and easier because they're already in a different place. No matter how much you argue with them, they're not there with you. They're somewhere else, and you're just upsetting them.
So what you're saying is there's no point in arguing because you'll never win.
You'll never win. You'll just become upset as well as the person that you're caring for. And I think our goal is to keep them calm and give them the best life they can have. And also for the caregiver. The caregiver doesn't want to be argumentative all day long either.
Some people just say, well, that's not right. And then I remember years ago, someone long time ago told me one time, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because you can't have both necessarily. And I remember that because caregivers sometimes get stuck on things. If, for instance, Mom says, oh, I like your green shirt, but perhaps your shirt is really pink, but Mom calls it
right.
Green. Are you going to correct her and say, no, Mom, this isn't green, this is pink, and then have, an argument about something so trivial? Or are you going to say, gee, Mom, thanks, I like it too? And I think if there's this a different mindset, I guess, that comes along with caregiving to learn how to respond to the person you're caring for that doesn't say everything right, because they're not going to say everything right.
You have to pick your battles, and it is very difficult. We tend to want to say, oh, that's not a green shirt. I mean, it's like human nature but we're in a whole different world. So it takes time to get comfortable with this world that we're in, with the person that we're caregiving for. And all I can say is just, do you want to argue all day? Do you want to be upset all day? Or do you want to try a different format in your life to make your life easier?
And that's what it's all about, is navigating this journey in the best way possible to relieve stress, because those types of interactions, that are argumentative or upsetting, they cause stress not only for the person with the dementia, but also the caregiver. And everybody knows the statistics on stress for caregivers, right?
That's right. But it does take practice. It doesn't come easy to always join this journey, because it's our tendency as human beings to go, that's not green, that's blue. And then we have to step back and go, oh, wait a minute, I have to handle this differently. And the mindset has to start to change, and that's where the training comes in. That's where the training comes in for the caregivers that work in memory care buildings with dementia. There's special training how you approach someone. You approach them calmly. You don't raise your voice. There's so many different ways that we deal with dementia that are so different than dealing with other people in our lives. And it all boils down to keeping things calm, and also for the caregiver.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is important for caregivers to know that if and when it becomes necessary to have your person that you care for move into a specialized memory care community, it is important to know that those caregivers there, the employees of the memory care, they've been trained. And that's one thing, obviously, people need to make sure of, and look at the experience and the training that's provided to these employees, because they do it inside and out every single day. So they have a lot of experience, and they know what works and what doesn't work. So I know a lot of maybe family caregivers are hesitant about that, but have you had a lot of good results, I guess I would say, with caregivers being more relieved when they actually came time to move their loved one into a memory care? And tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, there's definitely, there's a combination of many emotions. It's guilt, it's the fear of the unknown, but it's also many times so much relief. The thing is I get asked, and I'm sure you do too, Marcia, a caregiver will say, Pat, when is it time for me to place my grandma or my mom or my dad? And my answer is, when you can't handle this one moment longer, you've got to place them. And when I tell them that, I've had some good results from families that finally came and said, okay, I can't handle this one moment longer, I'm going to place. And we do ask them, depending on the family dynamics, sometimes we'll say, just give your loved one a couple days to get settled in before you come visit. Let them get to know the ropes of the community, let them know the staff, let them settle in their apartment, and then come and visit after a couple days. And I also tell those families, you're welcome to call a couple times a day and check on them and see how they're doing. But my feeling is that has worked best when you place your loved one.
But maybe they shouldn't wait until they are at the end of their rope, because a lot of times that could be a crisis, correct?
Yes, that can be a crisis. So, I'm also a big proponent of taking my clients and showing them communities ahead of time. I like the families to have a plan in place. So many times, the caregiver says, well, Pat, I'm not really ready to place them. And I say, but let's go look. Let's pick out a community that if you had an emergency, that you would place your loved one in. And then they're like, that's really a great idea to have a plan, because I never know what's going to happen from day to day. And sometimes all of a sudden after they start looking at the communities, they will decide to place. Or sometimes they'll decide to do a couple weeks of respite and try it out and then place it. place them. And it's also nice to have this in case the caregiver would get sick and go in the hospital, or the caregiver has a family emergency, has to go out of state, or just needs a break and have their loved one in a community for a few weeks. But I find many times these situations lead to a permanent placement because the caregiver sees, I can now be a wife or a mother or a daughter again and just go see my loved one.
That's a really good point, especially the respite, because a lot of caregivers do get burnt out, and sometimes they can't actually afford to do a permanent type of move-in for help for themselves and their loved one, but maybe taking that respite, a short-term break, a short-term stay in a memory care can give them that extra charge that they need to, refuel their batteries, so to speak, so that they are a better caregiver and not burnt out, and do that periodically. And I thank you for bringing that up about respite, because it's not something that you can overuse, I don't think, as long as it's good for you and it's good for the person that has the dementia, because the benefits to them are many. They get a lot of great stimulation and socialization. They have professionals caring for them, and the benefit, of course, to the caregiver is getting that break, because certainly you can't do it yourself 24/7. So thank you for bringing that up about the respite and encouraging people, I think, to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, if you're a caregiver at home, you're not an activity director. So you can't, do all these programs that the memory care buildings do. And also, when you have dementia, sometimes you feel more comfortable being with other residents that are like you. So there's so many reasons why a placement is a good idea.
Yep, I love that. Love that. So caregivers have a plan, whether it's a short-term plan or a long-term plan. But like Pat said, have a plan. And I always say, even if you don't have to use it, have one just in case.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's all about, educating yourself. And that's what we're doing here today. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be giving away an educational tool for caregivers, the 36-hour day book. So stay tuned so you'll learn how you can get a free resource. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts has 10 memory care communities in Florida and about 40 scattered throughout the United States. They specialize in memory care, and they also specialize in not only taking care of the person with memory loss, but helping the caregiver as well, and the family caregiver, through lots of resources. Today, they'd like to give you a free resource. This is called the 36-Hour Day Book. This is a wonderful book. Some people call it the Bible of Caregiving. It's been around many years, but it's continually being updated with new information. This book was written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace, and it's a wonderful resource to look something up. A lot of definitions, a lot of how-tos, a lot of explanations, everything a caregiver might need to know. To get this free book, all you have to do is call the toll-free number 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410, and tell them that you heard about the free book offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll be glad to get your name and address and make sure that they mail a book directly to your door. So I highly recommend this, and if you don't have it, get it. If you know someone who doesn't have it, get it for them. They'll be really glad that you did and appreciate that very, very much. So my guest today is Pat Zagany. Pat joins us on the telephone from the Sarasota, Florida area. Pat is a certified dementia practitioner, and we're talking about getting into the world of dementia as a caregiver, joining on the journey of the person with dementia, going through the journey because things are always changing. So, Pat, let's talk about some examples that we can just throw up here and talk about to caregivers of how you might use what you know about a person, right, that has the dementia to get them maybe to do what you need them to do. For instance, if you knew that mom loved to cook, right, how could you use that to get her to maybe eat better, for example?
Well, I think, you would be in the kitchen with mom, and you would just have her do some of the simple things that she'd be able to do. Maybe you're going to cut up some vegetables and you're going to have her put it in a pot. Maybe it's always got to be something very easy that they can just pick up and do, or even in the kitchen to fold napkins or set the table while she watches you cook. But you have to know, the person with dementia somewhat, to know what their capabilities are and what they can't do. So, if you're a daughter or a family member, pretty much you're going to know what mom is able to do as far as cooking or not. I mean, when I think about some of the residents in my buildings and dinner time, we would have some residents that would, forget what the silverware is for. But once they all sat down at a table and watched the other residents that did know what to do, then that would help them remember to pick up the silverware and eat. Or we might have somebody that can't sit still that likes to. I've had some residents that walk and walk and walk, and we couldn't get them to sit down and eat. So what we might do for them is we'd make some finger sandwiches or some cheese or a cracker, and we'd let them eat while they walk because we want to figure out how to get them to eat. That's important. A lot of people with dementia lose weight. So you've got to be creative. If you can't get them to sit at the table, then you figure out some finger foods that you can just hand them and they would eat while they walk. So, that is something really important.
Well, I like what you said about being creative. You definitely have to be creative or learn how to be creative if you're going to be a better caregiver, because what one thing might have worked in the past certainly may not work now or in the future. So you got to be flexible, and you have to think of different ways of doing the same thing. And like you said, if they can't use utensils, give them finger foods. If they won't sit long enough to eat, and certainly you're not going to, tie them to a chair, then they're going to have to eat on the run, and you're going to have to figure, these things out. I had a daughter one time who said, my mother just quit eating, nutritious food. All she wanted to do was eat sweets. And that certainly is very common with older people. As we age, we do tend to lose some of our certain taste buds, and we tend to like the sweets even more so, I think, than before. And the daughter said, I don't know what to do. I'll put a nice plate full of mashed potatoes and meatloaf and green beans on her plate, but she just won't eat it. She says, until I discovered a trick. And her trick was to drizzle some maple syrup over everything, including the mashed potatoes, including the meatloaf. And she said, Mom gobbled it up. She loved it because it was sweet, and a little bit of maple syrup wasn't going to hurt her. And I think something like that is great for caregivers to figure out. And why not, right?
What a great idea to get someone to eat, because you're right. They do seem to go towards all the sweets. I like that idea. But, for a caregiver, why would you want to struggle with trying to make them sit at the table when they're the ones that like to roam and walk? You want to make your life easier, and you want to make sure that they eat. So just think of some of these things to make it easier for both of you.
Right. One of the things that you mentioned, to let them do what they can do, or what they can do, what they can't do. And I think it's important to not be a hover caregiver. You hear about helicopter moms or helicopter dads who are hovering, not letting their child, be independent. And I think sometimes caregivers can hover too much. And what's the negative or the downside of wanting to do too much for the person you're caring for when they could do some things on their own, Pat?
Well, I think you're just shooting yourself in the foot, because the whole idea is to keep them as independent as possible as long as you can. So when you do more and more, then they forget how to do it. You might have your loved one that likes to ruffle through the silverware drawer, or will sit and rip Kleenex apart. I mean, it's okay. Let them do it. That's keeping them busy. That's keeping them happy. I mean, I've seen family members get all upset over those things. But again, I don't want to keep repeating join the journey, but when you do, let them do all these things. It's not going to be that hard to pick up some Kleenex or fix a silverware drawer. Or, I've seen them go into the lower kitchen cabinets and move all the canned goods around. Those are all really good things for them to do. It keeps them out of trouble.
Yeah, it's sort of like letting them do what they need to do, because sometimes there's an actual need inside that person to move things around. I've seen a lot of people. I had one lady that had frontal temporal lobe dementia, and she had this need that she had to rearrange things. And, some people are real picky about where things go, but as long as it's safe, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, as long as it's safe and they're happy doing what they're doing, why not let them? You have to sometimes, to quote the book, don't sweat the small stuff, right?
That's right. Absolutely. I have a resident or a family member that I know right now that she cleans her room every day. She dusts. She wants to sweep. She wants to vacuum. She does it every single day. But that's probably something that she did in her life. Maybe she loved cleaning, and now she still wants to do that in her room. So I say, let them go do it. I mean, it makes them happy. It's not hurting anything. We just have to go for it. I know, one of the other biggest problems, I think, is showering. We hear all the time from families, I can't get my loved one to shower. They don't want to go in the shower. There's so many different avenues for that. It is very difficult. Sometimes if you're in an actual building and your loved one is in an ardent court, I mean, sometimes it has to be a certain caregiver that they'll let shower. You have to try out different people sometimes when you're in a building. And sometimes if you have home care coming in your home, your loved one will relate to a certain personality. So sometimes you have to keep changing until you find that person that makes them comfortable enough to take their clothing off and go in the shower. I mean, how many of us want to take our clothes off in front of somebody? Nobody, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a real problem sometimes with someone with dementia. They don't understand why. I don't know this person. I don't want to take a shower. So it's something that you work on, and you try different avenues with that.
Well, there's also some workarounds, right? I mean, who says you have to take a full shower every single day. There's workarounds to make your life easier and still keep the hygiene of the person good, right? I mean, there's simple things you can do.
Absolutely. There's sit baths, and and really most dementia residents don't take a shower, but maybe 3 times a week at the most, because it's a difficult thing.
And they're not outside working and getting sweaty and all of that. And some days you may just want to wash off. So caregivers, like you said, have to be creative. I can't help but remember a story talking about getting into their world or joining them on the journey. One day I was working late and at the office, and I came back to the office to pick up some papers, and there was a family whose husband actually lived with us in the memory care community, and they said, "Oh, Marcia, we need your help." I said, "What's wrong?" "Well, my husband we took him out to dinner. My son's in town, and we picked my husband up and we took him out to dinner, but now he won't get out of the car. And it's about 7:30 at night, and he has been refusing to get out of the car, and he's been sitting there for close to 45 minutes, and nothing that they could do or say was going to get him out." He said no, and he wouldn't let them take off the seatbelt. They brought other family members that were visiting over. The dad, the husband, was not going to have anything to do with it. And he actually looked like he was getting frightened because he was surrounded, if you can picture him being in the passenger seat of the front seat of the car, surrounded by all these people. They brought out some other caregivers from inside to try to get him to come. And I think that there's a lesson here, because he probably felt he was surrounded, and he probably got frightened from all the commotion. So I came out, and I knew this particular resident pretty well, and I knew that he was a retired lawyer. So I asked everyone to move away out of his sight, and I sat down on the ledge of the car, the open door, the little step there, and started talking to him. And before I was done, he was on his own accord, getting the seatbelt off, got out of the car, he took my hand, and we walked in very quietly and calmly back into the community, back into his room where he needed to be. And the families, they were just amazed. They said, "Well, you're a miracle worker." And I said, "No, I'm not. What I am is I'm relating to who he is." And they said, "Well, what did you say to him? What did you do?" And I said, "Well, he's a retired lawyer. That's his world. That's what he did for, 40 years at least." And I said to the man, "I was preparing a document, a contract that I needed to present in court the next day, but I was having some trouble with it. And did he think that he could maybe help me and look it over and help me prepare for this court hearing that I had to go to?" And he, basically just rose to the occasion. He wanted to help. That was something he knew how to do. And so he said, "Yes, I want to help you." We got inside. I got him some papers. And pretty much by the time we got actually into the community, into his room, he kind of forgot about why we were there and about the conversation. And I think the whole point of the story is that you have to be creative, join their journey like Pat and I have been talking about, and find ways to get them to do what you need them to do without the fight, without the struggle. And I just never forgot that story, Pat, because it just impressed upon me there's different ways to communicate with people with dementia, that they're going to listen to you, and they're going to trust you, and they're going to want to help you, and they're going to want to do what you need them to do a lot easier than, maybe with the fighting and the struggling and the pleading and all of that, the bribing. So that's just one example I wanted to share with everyone.
That's a wonderful example of redirection. And, we use a lot of redirection with memory care, trying to get their mind onto something else. So that was really creative, Marcia. That's amazing.
Well, you have to do what you have to do. But again, it does help if someone knows the background. So if you're a caregiver and you're a faraway caregiver, maybe your loved one is a parent that lives in, say, Florida, and you live in New York, for example, and you have help coming into the home, I think it's important to educate that caregiver, that paid caregiver, who your dad is, who your mom is, what did they do, what do they like to do, things that they can relate to, because it's going to make a better experience for both of them, actually.
Yeah, it really helps a lot to know who you're working with. I know we're getting close to running out of time, but one thing too that I think a lot of our listeners have to deal with is sundowning, which happens later in the day when it seems like someone with dementia becomes more upset and agitated. So, many times in those situations, I recommend, if you can, to get them to sit and take some lotion and do their arms and their hands and just some really calming music. And that seems to help a lot with sundowning. And what ideas do you have, Marcia, on that?
Well, with sundowning, it's very difficult. Not everyone, obviously, sundowns, but you get to know a pattern of someone. You get to know their idiosyncrasies and their behaviors and their patterns. And once you know their patterns, sometimes you can actually preempt what would normally happen by getting someone involved in something. And I like your idea of the soothing, the lotions, but getting them involved in something that they like to do. Music is always a great resource. If you run out of things to say or do, put on some great music of the era of the person that they liked. And music is a great way to distract someone or get them maybe up and moving. If they are agitated, it's a good to get a lot of that energy out by doing a little dancing, even if it's dancing in place. Walking, taking a walk is good. You want to get the person moving because the more that they're active, I think that it helps them. The stimulation helps them. Although, there are some people that can be overstimulated, and that's the other flip side of the coin, right? I mean, too much stimulation is not good either.
Well, I find that when there's pets in the home, too, that's a big help. It seems like people with dementia love animals. I know we have these llamas that come into some of the buildings, and it is amazing to me how the residents react to them. It's a big calming effect.
They really relate to animals also. I don't know. I think it was last year we had a show about animals helping people with dementia to calm them down, but they were actually robotic animals, which is good for people that are allergic to animal hair or can't take care of a pet. So they were actually robotic cats and robotic dogs that looked real, sounded real, and acted real. And that was pretty amazing to me, that the innovations that are coming out now helping. One thing I want to mention, it was very timely also, is that, caregivers are learning as they go, but I want to say to caregivers, don't beat yourself up if you miss something, if you don't know something, because I believe it was last night on the national news, Dr. Oz, which everybody knows, the Dr. Oz show, he actually said that he missed signs, and his own mother has Alzheimer's, but he missed it, and he was actually beating himself up, saying, I should have known better, because then I would have caught it earlier. We would have been able to do some things that are different. So even a doctor, like a Dr. Oz, someone who is in the field of medicine, sometimes misses things. And so if you're a caregiver, don't beat yourself up. Just jump in where you are, right?
All you can do is the best that you know how to do. That's what we can all do. So, just being a caregiver alone is very, very challenging. And try to bring in as many people to help you if possible. If you have a neighbor or you have some children that'll give you a break. We know how important it is for caregivers to do an exercise class or just go shopping or just do something they want to do for a couple hours to get their mind off what's going on.
And not feel guilty about it.
Yes, the guilt.
Yeah.
Throw away the guilt, especially if you're out doing something on your own. Just try not to think about that.
Well, Pat, I know over in the Sarasota area you help a lot of families. If there's someone listening and they're from that neck of the woods in Florida near your vicinity and they would like to reach out to you for some help, can they do that?
Absolutely. They can email me. They can call me. I'll be glad to give you that if you'd like me to.
Absolutely. Go ahead and let everybody know how they can help. You work with Senior Choices is the name of the company. So tell us how people can contact you.
Yes, you can contact me by phone, 941-725-1498. That's my cell. And also through my email, which is pat@seniorchoices.us. And I do cover Manatee County, which is Bradenton, and Sarasota County, which is Sarasota and Venice and a couple other suburbs. So I'd be glad to help anybody that needs some help. Just give me a call.
That's great. And if you're a caregiver and you don't live in the vicinity of Pat's area to get Pat's expertise, try to find a certified dementia practitioner in your area. Find your Pat. Find the person who can guide you and help you and lead you in the right direction, because it's very valuable to be able to have that person literally, figuratively, and sometimes even literally holding your hand. Right, Pat?
That's right. And, all of you caregivers out there, you're wonderful, because everybody needs an advocate. A senior alone, it's just so difficult for them. They need those advocates, and you are their advocates, all of the caregivers out there.
Very true, very true. What else would be parting words for caregivers that you'd like to stress? Because I know that there are certain things that maybe are your pet peeves or things that you really try to educate caregivers on that is a sticking point. Any last parting words that you would like to give to us?
Well, we've touched on a lot of things, but please make it easy on yourself. Please join their journey. Don't fight it. Don't fight the green shirt. If it's green, say it's green. Let them walk and hold their food. Make your life easier. It's difficult being a caregiver.
And ask for help.
Just ask for help when you need it. Go to a support group. Support groups are great. Sometimes just talking to a girlfriend or friends, that might be all you need if you have some informed friends that are willing to sit and talk about what's going on in your life. But don't hold it all inside. That's just going to make everything so much harder for you. Find people to talk to. Find other people that are in your situation. And sometimes you can help each other. You can, somebody can stay at your house while you go out. You can go to their house while I know a lot of caregivers that have a little group and they all help each other, which really lightens your load.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Like when our kids were little, we had a babysitting co-op, and the kids went to one person's house a certain day of the week and then somebody else's turn. So it gave the moms that maybe not necessarily were working, but it gave them time to do their shopping and do some of their errands while they were being watched for their kids and playing with other kids. So I think that's a great idea, is join forces that way, because nobody's going to understand better than someone who's in the same boat as you are. So, Pat, I want to thank you so very much for coming on to the Caregiver Solution Info Show today and sharing your expertise and with all the compassion and knowledge that you have. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcia, and I hope to see you when you get to Sarasota.
Well, you never know. I might show up there again, and We are always here for caregivers every Tuesday, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Different shows. We're live out of Boca Raton and different topics. So join us. You can call us. You can listen. You can share. Anything that a caregiver needs can be found. All you have to do is ask and look, and don't feel that you're alone. So I have parting words for all of you. Don't forget to call in for your free 36-hour day book. That's 888-478-2410, 888-478-2410. Call in and get this free book. It's just a wonderful resource for caregivers. Call Pat if you're in the Sarasota area of Florida. Touch base with her or find your own certified dementia practitioner. And in the meantime, don't forget, give someone a hug because they need it and so do you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.